ہوگی وہاں آتی ہے سکینہ، پانی نہ ملا آج بھی پیاسی ہے سکینہ، پیاسی ہے سکینہ، ہائے پیاسی ہے سکینہ۔ اللہ کرے آئے کبھی ایسا زمانہ، ہو شام کے زنداں کی طرف آپ کا جانا، پھٹ جائے گا دل دیکھ کے وہ غم کا ٹھکانہ، بے حال ہوئی قبر میں سوتی ہے سکینہ، پانی نہ ملا آج بھی پیاسی ہے سکینہ، پیاسی ہے سکینہ، ہائے پیاسی ہے سکینہ۔ یوں جانبے دریا گئے عباس سے دلاور، اور دریا سے مشکیزہ بھرا بادل مضطر، دریا کی ہر ایک موج یہ کہتی تھی تڑپ کر، ہے تیسرا دن ہائے تڑپتی ہے سکینہ، پانی نہ ملا آج بھی پیاسی ہے سکینہ، پیاسی ہے سکینہ، ہائے پیاسی ہے سکینہ۔ مجلس جہاں ہوگی وہاں آتی ہے سکینہ، پانی نہ ملا آج بھی پیاسی ہے سکینہ، پیاسی ہے سکینہ، ہائے پیاسی ہے سکینہ۔ پر محمد وآل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ محمد وآل محمد۔
سورة المباركة الفاتحة۔ أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله لقد جاءت رسول ربنا بالحق الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء المرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا والنبينا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وبآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين وصل على صاحب الدعوة النبوية والصولة الحيدرية والإسمة الفاطمية والحلم الحسنية والشجاعة الحسينية والصبر السجادية وآثار الباقرية ومآثر الصادقية وعلوم الكاظمية وحجج رضوية وجود التقوية والنقاوة النقوية والهيبة الأسكرية والغيبة إلهية والقائمة بالحق اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم ومحكم كتاب المجيد وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فستذكرون ما أقول لكم وأفوض أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد فوقاه الله سيئات ما مكروا وحاق بآل فرعون سوء العذاب. The 40th chapter of the Holy Quran is known as Surah Al-Ghafir. And another name of the same chapter of the Holy Quran is also known as Surah Al-Mu'min, the chapter of the believer. Who is this believer? Who is this mu'min that the Quran speaks of? Who is this mu'min that the Quran's entire chapter has been named after? This mu'min in the Holy Quran, in which a whole chapter is named after, is referred to the mu'min of Al-Fir'aun. And in the traditions you have, his name was Hizqil or either Hizqiyal. Now who was Hizqil? Hizqil was the cousin of Fir'aun. He was the finance minister of the empire of Fir'aun. So he would take care of all the treasury. Hizqil, not only that, was a close friend of Fir'aun, a close advisor of Fir'aun, and a close confidant of Fir'aun. So much so, anytime that Fir'aun would like to speak to someone, anytime Fir'aun required to take an advice of an individual, he would ask for Hizqil. This is the mu'min of Al-Fir'aun. So we see that this Hizqil enjoyed a very high status, not only in the court of Fir'aun, but also with the Pharaoh himself. Then we move on, we look into some hadith literature. The Holy Prophet has been quoted to have said, not only in the Shi'i literature, but also in the Sunni literature, and he says that there are three Siddiqs, there are three truthful individuals. The first of the ones is Habib al-Najjar, Mu'min al-Yasin. The second one is Hizqil, the mu'min of Al-Fir'aun. And the third one is, of course, Ali bin Abi Talib, and he is the more truthful and superior to the other two. Or, for example, we look into the tradition of Imam al-Sadiq, who says that on the reappearance of the Hujjat, on the reappearance of the Qa'im, Hizqil, the mu'min of Al-Fir'aun, will be one of the 17 individuals that will make a reappearance. And so, when we look at this mu'min of Al-Fir'aun, we see that not only there are at least 20 verses revealed in the Holy Quran referring to him, there is an entire chapter which has been named after this individual. Not only that, but he has been given a lot of importance in the hadith literature. And therefore, such an individual who's had such an illustrious life has no doubt many an insight, many a wisdom, Many a lesson that you and I can no doubt take from such an individual. And therefore, the topic of tonight's discussion is titled Mu'min Al Fir'aun, trying to take lessons, pearls of wisdom from the believer, from amongst the people of Pharaoh. And inshallah, we'll try and make it as practical as possible to see how we can apply what his skill did and what he teaches us within our own lives today and at this age. However, before we continue with the topic at hand, I would like to extend my condolences to the Imam of our time, to the beloved Prophet and his holy progeny, and of course, to the community at large for a indeed very heavy martyrdom of a very young daughter of Abu Abdullah, Sayyida Ruqayya. Some know her as Sayyida Sakina, Sukaina. But given that we've said this, you see, Imam Hussein alayhi salam has said that should I have had 1,000 sons, I would have named them all Ali, and should I have had 1,000 daughters, I would have named them all Fatima. And so the Sakina, Sukaina, Ruqayya are all titles that have been given to her. Ruqayya is a title given to her by the Arabs. Sakina is another title that is given to her in reference to what Imam Hussein alayhi salam had described her as, someone who gives sukoon to one's heart. And so tonight we are here to commemorate a very heavy martyrdom of the very tender daughter of Abu Abdullah. And inshallah we will try and discuss her martyrdom tonight. Now, we continue with the topic at hand, Mu'min of Al-Fir'aun. You see, one of the first and foremost lessons that we are able to derive from his illustrious life is how we can take care of our own iman, of our own faith, without having any excuses or blaming the society that we are brought up in. Now, Mu'min of Al-Fir'aun, he was the cousin of Fir'aun. He was the finance minister of Fir'aun. He was the closest confidant of Fir'aun. He had all of the wealth that this earth could give at his disposal. He had all of the power that this earth could give him. In top of that, Fir'aun would enjoy talking with him so much. He trusted him so much, saying that if I am to die, then his skill is to be my successor. And Fir'aun would call himself, Ana Rabbukum al-A'la. Fir'aun would call himself as the Lord Most High. So his skill was a single step away from man-made deity. This is the power his skill already wielded. He was the successor in line after Fir'aun. But yet, the thing that we take from his skill is, despite having all of that power, despite having all of that wealth, despite being in a society that would worship Fir'aun, his skill was still able to not only protect his iman, but practice his iman, practice his faith. For example, Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun, again, did not let the wickedness of the man whom she had married define who she was. Asiya again did not allow the wealth that she had to define her values. She did not allow the power that she wielded to define her faith. But yet, she sacrificed her mind, her body and soul in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so one of the first lessons that we take from the life of Hizqeel is, no matter what environments that you may be placed under, no matter what circumstances you may be in, no matter what place you may be surrounded in, you don't have any excuse when it comes to the faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Fir'aun's own cousin Hizqeel, his own wife Asiya were able to have the faith in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the prophethood of Musa alayhi salam, then who are we to say maybe it's not as easy for me? And so today, for example, in the social media that we have and all the algorithms that are now faced towards us, in the life in our schools that we have, in the environment that we live in, no doubt it's not easy being a practicing Muslim in the West. Of course, we need to appreciate that and acknowledge that, but at the same time we understand that if Hizqeel and Asiya could do that, then no doubt there is hope for you and I. So this is one of the first lessons that we take from the life of Hizqeel and apply it within our lives. The second lesson that we take from Hizqeel is how he would practice the concepts of taqiyya and tawriyya to not only help himself save his life, but to help further the message of Musa alayhi salam. You see, before I go this, what do I mean when I say taqiyya and tawriya? This is by the concepts which Hizqeel used to make use of. Taqiyya is discretionary concealment, hiding your faith because you are afraid of the retribution of the society, of the dictator, of the tyrannical place you're living in. Whereas tawriya, another word for tawriya is half-truth. For example, you say something, the person understands something, but the reality is something completely different. It's a way that an individual is able to say something without lying, half-truth. Of course, only applicable when you have to protect your life and your wealth and your family and so on and so forth. And so Hizqeel would practice taqiyya, he would practice tawriya in order to save his faith and to save the people around him and his Prophet Musa alayhi salam. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So now, this is what Hizqeel would make use of. However, was it easy for Hizqeel to practice taqiyya? Was it easy for Hizqeel to hide his faith in a society that had been devoid of the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Was it easy for Hizqeel not to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala openly in a place where they worship something other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? His community, his neighbors, everyone in the society was not worshipping the Lord that he was worshipping. Was that easy for him to do so? No, of course not. It wasn't easy for him to conceal his faith, but yet he did it. Now, whenever he would get chance to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in peace, in quiet and in solitude, he would make use of that time. So one day, he takes his horse, he looks for a mountain and he goes high up into the mountain trying to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like Asiya, for example, wasn't able to worship her Lord, she would go and worship in the toilets and in the washrooms of her house. So then Hizqeel one day goes and tries to find a spot where he can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in solitude. Once Fir'aun then said, where is Hizqeel? I have an urgent matter that I must discuss with him at once. But of course, Hizqeel was nowhere to be found in the court of Fir'aun. So Fir'aun sends his soldiers throughout his kingdom too. Such soldiers asked around, found out in which village he might have been spotted, and they noticed just beneath the mountain there was the horse of Hizqeel. So they realized that Hizqeel must have ascended the mountain. So they very well descend from their horse and try ascending the mountain. And from afar they noticed that Hizqeel is performing some actions that sometimes the Banu Israel would do, and he is worshipping a Lord other than Fir'aun. And as soon as they saw this, Hizqeel realized, he heard some noise that he has been spied on and followed, and so he makes a distraction. The animals start running, the birds start flying, and so he uses that opportunity to quickly run away. However, these two soldiers had already seen Hizqeel worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now these two soldiers have a conversation with themselves and they say, imagine Hizqeel, the cousin of Fir'aun, Hizqeel, his most trusted advisor, worshipping a Lord other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Surely Fir'aun would give a huge reward. The other soldier, however, was saying, look, Hizqeel has done nothing except good for us. If we are to report Hizqeel to Fir'aun, he will kill Hizqeel, and no doubt you and I and this community will lose a good person. We will lose a noble individual. But the former person says, no, I wish to get the reward from Fir'aun, and so I'm going to report Hizqeel. And so these two soldiers run back, and one of that soldier reports him to Fir'aun. So as soon as Hizqeel enters the court of Fir'aun, you can imagine the rage that was filled in the eyes of Fir'aun. As soon as Hizqeel enters the court of Fir'aun, Fir'aun looks at Hizqeel. He shouts out, Hizqeel, come here. Hizqeel comes forward. He says, what is it that I have heard about you that you worship a Lord other than myself? Hizqeel looks at Fir'aun and he says, Fir'aun, how long have you known me for? Do you know me as a truthful individual? Have you ever heard me lie? Fir'aun said, no, you're a trustworthy individual. I have complete faith in you. And so he looks at the person and he says, look, if you are trying to create a discord between him and I, then be wary that I'm going to make an example that people will tell tales for years to come. And then Hiskil, if you are trying to worship a Lord other than me, then I'm going to make an example out of you. So Hiskil says, Fir'aun, have you known me for so many years? Fir'aun, you've known me as a truthful individual. Who told you that I worship a Lord other than you? He says, this individual says so. He says, bring him forward. He comes forward. Hiskil says, Fir'aun, ask him a question. Ask him, oh man, who is your creator? So Fir'aun asks him, who is your creator? So the soldier says, Fir'aun, you are my creator. Hiskil says, very well, ask him, who is his Lord and sustainer? He looks at him and says, who is your Lord and your sustainer? He says, Fir'aun, you are my Lord and my sustainer. Hiskil says, ask him the third question, what? Who is your nourisher? So here Fir'aun again looks at the soldier and says, who is your nourisher? He says, Fir'aun, you are my nourisher. So Hiskil looks at Fir'aun and he says, look, in that case, you testify, and everyone around sitting in the court testify that his Lord is my Lord, his creator is my creator, and his nourisher is my nourisher. Right? And as soon as he said that, the court was amazed at this proclamation. Fir'aun was impressed at the way he made his proclamation, and he was like, wow. Right? Now, Hiskil, of course, practiced tawriya, half-truth. And at that time, Fir'aun, of course, made the example of the other soldier that had reported to him. So this is how Hiskil would protect his life in the way of doing that. Now, if we look into the Holy Quran, Surah Al-Qasas, chapter number 28, verse number 20, you see practicing taqiyya in such a state has its own benefits that you're able to support the Prophet of the time, Musa alayhi salam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also refers to Hiskil as the individual who had concealed his faith. And so, if you all remember the story when Musa alayhi salam was living in Egypt, there was a brawl between two individuals, one from the children of the Israelites, and the other with a man of Fir'aun. And when they were having this brawl, the individual from Banu Israel says, Musa, help me. So Musa comes forth, he gives him one such blow that he unintentionally kills him. As soon as he does that, the Quran says, chapter number 28, there came to him upon an individual saying that Fir'aun and his men are intending to kill you, so you should run away and save your life, for I am your sincerest of advisors. And of course, Musa alayhi salam goes towards Madian, marries the daughter of Shu'aib, and returns back 10 years later. Who was the sincerest of advisors? The Holy Quran says, informed Musa of what is about to happen? This individual, Hiskil, being a cousin of Pharaoh and being an heir to the throne, has its benefits. You have access to the innermost secret, right? So this is one benefit of practicing taqiyya for Hiskil. And again, if we look at this concept even later on in the Holy Quran, Surah An-Nahl, verse number 108, we all know the story of, for example, Ammar bin Yasir and his parents. And the Holy Quran testifies the story within the verse. For example, we all know that the beginning part of the prophethood of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam was a time where they had to be secretive. The Prophet himself only propagated the religion of Islam for a couple of years, only to his closest of followers. Only then did he come out of taqiyya. Now, the kuffar of the time, the polytheists of the time would torture anyone who would believe in the message of Rasulullah. And one of those individuals that they would torture was Yasir, the father of Ammar, the first of the martyrs, and Sumayya, the mother of Ammar. And after the polytheists had tortured the parents of Ammar and martyred them, they now turned their attention to Ammar bin Yasir. And when they started torturing him, Ammar accepted and said whatever word that these polytheists made him say. However, when he left there, the companions started spreading news that Ammar has gone back to the worshipping of the idols. He's gone away from the religion of Islam. The companions would come to Ammar and say, you have now gone out of the fold of Islam. And so Ammar was feeling very distraught. He comes to the Holy Prophet, and he says to the Holy Prophet, look, this is what I had to do. So the Holy Prophet asks him, when you said whatever words they made you say, well, how did you find your heart? He said, I found my heart steadfast in your message and the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the Holy Prophet says, "Oh Ammar, even later, many a times, if you are forced to say whatever they make you say so. Say, protect and save your life." And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has explained that in Surah An-Nahl, verse number 108. And so we understand that taqiyya and tawriyya are both part and parcel of our own religion, and one must use them when they feel that their life is at stake and such in instances. And again, if we look at Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, he has been quoted to have said that discretionary concealment, taqiyya, is the religion of myself and that of my forefathers. Those that do not believe in this form has no religion, for you are able to use taqiyya as a shield, just like Mu'min of Al-Fir'aun did to save his own life. And so we understand that taqiyya and tawriyya are another tools that an individual may be able to use. That's lesson number 2. So far, in the story of Mu'min of Al-Fir'aun, the first lesson that we've discussed is how we are able to believe in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regardless of the environment that we may be raised in. Number 2, the concept of taqiyya and tawriyya. Number 3 is how he would proclaim the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, you see, Mu'min of Al-Fir'aun was of course enjoying the luxuries that world had to offer, and he was trying to protect Musa alayhi salam and the people around him through practicing taqiyya. However, there came a time where he openly said, "No, this is my religion, this is what I believe in, and Musa alayhi salam is my prophet." But before that, he tried and performed his tabligh in however he was able to perform. For example, we know the story when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had ordered Musa alayhi salam, "Idhhab ila Fir'auna innahu tagha," go unto Pharaoh, for verily he has transgressed. Musa comes, he shows his miracle of the staff. The magicians show the miracle of their ropes, but Musa's miracle, magicians show their magic, and Musa's miracle overpowers the magic of the magicians. And so the magicians submit to the message of Musa alayhi salam. So at that point, where Fir'aun realizes what is happening, he orders that the magicians are to be put to the death, those that follow Musa are to be put to the death, and Musa alayhi salam himself is to be put to death, and he is to be killed. At this point where he realized that Musa alayhi salam's life is at stake, he reveals his own religion. But before doing that, he goes through stages, and he tries to explain the people over 5 different methods. What do I mean? Firstly, he uses logic, and he says, "Look, why do you want to kill Musa alayhi salam? Let's think logically. If Musa alayhi salam is lying, then his lie will follow him. He will lose his reputation. Why do we need to kill him? However, if we end up killing someone who is saying the truth, then we will be at loss. So let's think logically." Number 2, he would use the examples of the punishment of the people of Nuh, Ad, and Thamud, saying, "Look, they have been punished by believing in the one true message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we are to not believe in him, then we will also perish." Then he would use the example of what they were relevant examples, like the story of Prophet Yusuf, who a couple of years ago was in Egypt, and he would say, "Look, Yusuf alayhi salam also brought such and such message." And at this point, Fir'aun was able to extend the killing of Musa alayhi salam until he was able to construct a tall tower so that he was able to climb up and see the Lord of Musa, see the God of Musa. So at this 3rd level, he was able to postpone the death of Musa. On the 4th level, he says that, look, whether you are believing man or woman, as long as you believe in the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Jannat and paradise and heaven will be yours. And at the 5th level, when he realizes that whatever he's doing, Musa alayhi salam is still going to be killed, at that time he proclaims his message. And he says, فَسَتَذْكُرُونَ مَا أَقُولُ لَكُمْ. So listen and remember what I tell you. وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. And I entrust my affairs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَصِيرٌ بِالْعِبَادِ. Verily, indeed, no doubt, Allah is hearing and seeing of His servants. فَوَقَاهُ اللَّهُ سَيِّئَاتِ مَا مَكْرُوا. Allah in the following verse, Surah Al-Ghafir, chapter number 44. In the following verse, verse number 45, Allah says, فَوَقَاهُ اللَّهُ سَيِّئَاتِ مَا مَكْرُوا. So Allah protected him from the evils that they plotted. وَهَاقَ بِآلِ فِرْعَوْنَ سُوءِ الْعَذَابِ. And he enveloped the people of the Pharaoh in severe punishment. Now, Now this is a very beautiful thing that I want to spend a little bit more time into. What are the four most important things within our life? By no doubt, a lot of people would say wealth, right? Wealth is one of the most important things within our life, and we'll try and protect our wealth by depositing it in a bank, thinking that maybe the money will stay safe in the bank. Of course, 2008 proved us wrong. Now, what's more important than wealth? That we're ready to spend our wealth for health, right? We will, a slightest of cough, a slightest of sneeze, we're happy to spend our wealth, rush to the pharmacies, rush to the doctors, and try and sort our health out. What is the third thing that we are happy to now spend our wealth and health for? Our children, right? Our children are everything. We'll always advise them, look, when you go to school, don't take anything from a stranger, and if something was to happen to our children, then we would happily sacrifice our wealth and our health. Now, what is the fourth more important things, more important than wealth, health, and children? It is no doubt our iman, our faith. And shaitan is here to corrupt this very iman. So now, Mu'min of Al-Fir'aun, Hizqeel, is in a pickle, right? He has just declared the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in front of not just Fir'aun, but his whole empire, right? But at this point, he says, وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. I entrust my affairs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah responds to him. And we protected him from the evil plans that they had plotted. You see, the first time Hizqeel recited this dua was at the time when he was in the mountains, when the people had seen him. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects him in that manner, and he prolongs his life. Now, the question is, how did Allah protect Hizqeel in a moment where he had openly declared his faith against Fir'aun? Allah says, I protected him. You see, a few years ago, in 2008 or so, we had a disease in the world by the name of ISIS, the non-Islamic state. Not ISIS, we don't do their marketing for them and call them Islamic. ISIS, the non-Islamic state. Now imagine if you were walking in the streets and individuals of ISIS were to corner you, and of course they hate Shias, and if they were to corner you and you realize that this is it, and you're overpowered by numbers, right? There's 5, 10, 20 of them. So now you know you can't fight your way through and you're cornered. But you remember the story of Hizqeel, and you remember the verse that I've just related to you, and you recite, وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ, and I entrust all of my affairs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know Allah has promised that if you recite this dua, I will protect you. Now what can happen in such a pickle? Two things can happen. When you recite this dua, Allah might give you a miracle and give you superhuman strength. May make you invisible, or may give you that sort of strength that you're able to fight your way out of these 20 armed individuals. Or what he could do is he could annihilate your enemy for you, make them go blind, or just seize their existence. But what if I was to tell you there's a third way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can protect you? What is the most important thing for you? Your iman, your life, you're happy to sacrifice. It's your iman that is more important. Similarly, when it came to Hizqeel, when he recited this dua, Allah promises that I protected him, past tense, and I protected him. Now, there are very few traditions that state that Fir'aun was able to run away with Hizqeel was able to run away with Musa and cross the river Nile. However, the more prominent tradition states that no, Hizqeel was butchered. Allama Tabatabai in his Tafsir al-Mizan, he quotes Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Imam Sadiq says that Hizqeel was murdered, butchered by Fir'aun. His body was mutilated and his limbs were cut into pieces. But yet, Allah was able to protect him through safeguarding his iman. Subhanallah. Now, this is the fourth lesson that we'd like to present tonight. Whatever happens, whether we lose our wealth, whether we lose our health and our life, and of course, anything that we own, including our family and children, the Iman is the most important thing that one should try and protect the most. And so tonight we will end the English discussion of the topic here. We'll end it with a conclusion, inshallah. We'll move on to the Musibah. So today in the topic title, Mu'min of Al Fir'aun, we have discussed lesson number 1, that no matter what environments that you are in, you need to protect your own Iman. Lesson number 2, we had tried and understand how taqiyya and tawriyya are concepts that one may be able to use. Lesson number 3, we were able to discuss how you are able to propagate the message that you may have at that time. As we saw, his skill was able to propagate the message through 5 different ways, be it direct or indirect. And finally, we understood that Iman is the most important thing in our life that we must always endeavor to try and protect. And as part of a conclusion, I'd like to now present the following conclusion. And referring back to lesson number 3. You see, his skill was tried his level best. And he was able to try and propagate the message of Musa alayhi salam through logic, through the examples of past prophets, through relevant examples that they would relate to, like Yusuf alayhi salam, who lived only a few years ago. And he tried indirect methods and direct methods. And this is a lesson for us, as not only as muballighs who go in societies as visiting speakers, but also as community members, that you and I are ambassadors of the religion of Islam. And whenever an individual wishes to see how a master was, they will look at his followers, his students. And so whenever we go out into our universities, our schools, our places of work and society, we must understand that we are ambassadors of that prophet who has been quoted to have said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمُ الْأَخْلَاقِ, that indeed I have been sent to perfect noble morals. Not good morals, not mahasin al-akhlaq, makarim al-akhlaq. What is the difference between mahasin and makarim? Good morals is you do good to those individuals that are good to you. Nothing new there. But the Holy Prophet has come to perfect noble morals. Noble morals, you do good to even those individuals that aren't doing good to you. And when we go back to the societies, we don't go as individuals as Muhammad and Ali and Zayn and Shabbir. We go as the ambassadors of that Holy Prophet that was a mercy to the mankind. And so we end our topic. The wife of Fir'aun had a name by the name of Siyanat al-Mashiyah. And she was a hairdresser of the daughter of Fir'aun. And this is the cruelty of the daughter of Fir'aun. Imam Sadiq says that he was asked, who is Haqabi al-Fir'aun, where the verse says that Allah has enveloped the children of Fir'aun. Imam Sadiq says it refers to this individual, the daughter of Fir'aun. Look at how she would oppress. And Siyanat, again, we have in the traditions of the Holy Prophet that when he went to Mi'raj, he could smell a beautiful fragrance. Jibra'il says this is the ashes of her. Siyana, the wife of Hiskil, and her children. Or for example, Imam Sadiq says that another individual that is to reappear with the hujjat of our time is Siyanat, and she will go and tend to the wounded soldiers of Imam al-Mahdi. Now once where Siyana was brushing the hair of the daughter of Fir'aun, accidentally she dropped the comb onto the floor. So when she went to pick this comb up, she said, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Suddenly the daughter looks at Siyana. She says, you speak of a Lord. Which Lord do you mean? My father? Siyana says, no. The Lord that I am talking about is my Lord, your Lord, and the Lord of your father. I speak of the one true Lord. And so Siyana and the daughter of Fir'aun complains to Fir'aun. Now imagine, Fir'aun's inner circle is now being desecrated, right? His skill has his closest confidant turns away from the religion of Fir'aun. Musa has just made this revolution. The Banu Israel are turning away from his kingdom. And so Fir'aun is at a state where he really wants to make an example of Siyana. He's already killed his skill, he's mutilated his body, but he can't take revolution and rebellion like that in his face. And so he tries to make an example of Siyana. And he says, Siana, come forward. Bring all of your children forward. And he says, look, this is the last time I give you. This is the last opportunity you have. Come back to the religion of your forefathers. Take me as your Lord. Siana was adamant on her faith, and she says, no, I believe in the Lord of Musa alayhi salam. So Fir'aun orders that, according to one tradition, a copper furnace is to be brought forward. According to another tradition, boiling water or boiling oil is to be brought forward. And one by one, Fir'aun puts the children of Siana into this boiling oil, one after the other. But yet Siana is able to be steadfast in her religion. However, the narrations state that when the soldiers of Fir'aun took the infant of Siana away from her hands, and here Fir'aun was saying, look, Siana, this is your final opportunity. Are you still steadfast in your faith? Siana was steadfast, but at that moment she had a little bit of hesitation. And the narrations state that that infant spoke by the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, saying, oh mother, don't worry about me. Be steadfast in the religion of Musa alayhi salam. And by doing so, Fir'aun was able to burn all of the children of Siana in boiling oil. And of course, Siana also met the same fate. Siana lost all of her children on a single day. And our minds go to the plains of Kerbala, where there was another individual, another lady, that's also lost everything that she possessed on a single day. And that is, of course, Lady Rabab. Not only did she lose her husband, but she also lost her entire family, her entire children. You see, the animosity against the Ahlul Bayt never stopped at murdering them, at martyring them, at butchering them. History testifies that the animosity between Habil and Qabil was buried as soon as Habil was buried. However, not in the books of Banu Umayyah. Banu Umayyah, not only did they butcher Aba Abdullah, but they looted his body, they burned his tents, they oppressed his family. And one of the children that they began oppressing was this daughter of Hussein alayhi salam that we have come to commemorate. Azizan Girami اور سامعین محترم, مصائب سے پہلے دو جملے آپ کے سماعت میں پیش کرنا چاہوں گا. ذکر حسین ابن علی جب بھی بیان ہوتا ہے, ذکر حسین ابن علی جب بھی بیان ہوتا ہے تو چہرہ یہ ابلیس سے بغض عیاں ہوتا ہے. اور کیا عجب راز ہے ماتم شبیر میں, اور کیا عجب راز ہے ماتم شبیر میں, ہاتھ پڑتا ہے یہاں درد کہیں اور ہوتا ہے. عزیزان گرامی, آزادان امام مظلوم کربلا, آج ہم یہاں جمع ہوئے ہیں مولا حسین علیہ السلام کو یاد کرنے کے لیے. آج ان کا 30واں ہے, اور اس کے ساتھ ساتھ مولا حسین علیہ السلام کی 4 سالہ دختر کو بھی یاد کرنے کے لیے آئے ہیں. عزیزان گرامی, اگر عزاداران امام حسین علیہ السلام کے آنسو اگر جمع کیے جائے تو 8واں سمندر بحر حسین بن جائے. یہ ماتم, یہ مجلس 1400 سال سے جاری ہے. اس کو ختم کرنے والے خود ختم ہو گئے, لیکن نام حسین, مجلس حسین, ماتم حسین آج بھی جاری ہے اور قیامت تک باقی رہے گی. اور کیوں نہ باقی رہے, جس کو باقی رکھنے والا خود بقیت اللہ آج بھی باقی ہے. زہرا کا نور عین زندہ ہے, جام بدر و حنین زندہ ہے. کہہ دو اس دور کے یزیدیوں سے, کہہ دو اس دور کے یزیدیوں سے کہ آج بھی ایک حسین زندہ ہے. شاعر آل محمد جناب میر تکلم نے کیا خوب کہا ہے, شبیر نے رکھا ہے تیرا نام سکینہ, شبیر نے رکھا ہے تیرا نام سکینہ, صدیوں کے برابر ہے تیرے کام سکینہ. تو نے جلایا ہے غم سرور کا دیا, تو نے جلایا ہے غم سرور کا دیا, اب شام میں ہوتی ہی نہیں شام سکینہ. درود بھیجئے محمد اور آل محمد پر. بس عزیزان گرامی, عزاداران امام مظلوم کربلا, آج ہم یہاں جمع ہوئے ہیں جناب سکینہ کی وفات منانے کے لیے. سکینہ حسین کے دل کا چین، وہ سکینہ شمر کے تماچے کھانے والی سکینہ، جس کے رخسار بھی زخمی، جس کے کان بھی زخمی، اور جس کے کرتے کا دامن بھی جلا ہوا. سکینہ حسین کے دل کا چین، رباب کی بڑی بیٹی. عزیزان گرامی، آج ہم یہاں آئے ہیں ساتھ میں مل کر جناب سیدہ کو پرساد ہے، جناب سید الشہداء کو پرساد ہے، جناب ام رباب کو پرساد ہے، ان کی دختر کا، ان کی بیٹی کا. آپ اگر عرب میں جائیں گے، شام میں جائیں گے تو نام رقیہ بتلایا جاتا ہے. لوگ کہتے ہیں کہ آپ رقیہ کیوں نہیں بتاتے، آپ کیوں سکینہ یا سکینہ کہتے ہیں. عزیزان گرامی، نام میں اختلاف ہو سکتا ہے، وجود میں اختلاف نہیں ہے. تاریخ طبری سب نے لکھا ہے، طبری نے بھی اپنی تاریخ میں لکھا ہے، نام نہیں لیتا، لیکن فرماتا ہے کہ حسین کی ایک 4 سالہ بچی تھی جو زندان شام میں رحلت کر گئی، جو انتقال کر گئی. ہاں عزیزان گرامی، سکینہ رباب کے دل کا چین. 2 ہی تو بچے تھے نا ام رباب کے، ایک اصغر اور ایک سکینہ. اصغر کو کربلا میں چھوڑ آئی اور سکینہ کو تنہا اکیلے زندان شام میں چھوڑ آئی. عزیزان گرامی، ایک مرتبہ رات کا وقت تھا، تاریکی میں سکینہ زندان شام میں تھی. اچانک سے سکینہ نے خواب دیکھا، خواب میں اپنے بابا حسین کو دیکھا. بس جو ہی خواب میں بابا کو دیکھا نا تو چیخ کر پکارتی ہے، بابا آپ مجھے چھوڑ کر کہاں چلے گئے؟ بابا آپ کے بعد شمر نے مجھے بڑے تماچے مارے ہیں. بابا آپ کے بعد میرے کانوں سے بالیاں چھین لی گئی. بابا آپ کے بعد میں چچا عباس کو پکارتی رہ گئی، لیکن چچا عباس نہیں آئے. میں کہتی تھی یا عمو عباس میری مدد کو آئیے. بابا میں یہاں پہ نہیں رہنا چاہتی، بابا مجھے اپنے ساتھ لے جاؤ. بس ایک مرتبہ سکینہ کی آنکھ کھلتی ہے، جو ہی دیکھا کہ بابا نہیں ہے، زندان شام ہے. ماں اماں پکارتی ہے، اماں بابا تو یہی تھے، بابا کہاں چلے گئے؟ اماں مجھے بابا کے پاس جانا ہے، اماں مجھے یہاں نہیں رہنا. بس ایک مرتبہ ساری بیبیاں نے ایک مرتبہ رونا شروع ہوا. سکینہ نے اپنا خواب سنایا، بیبیاں چیخ کر رونے لگی. عزیزان گرامی، یزید سویا ہوا تھا، نیند سے بیدار ہوتا ہے، کہتا ہے اپنے سپاہیوں سے کہ یہ کون رو رہا ہے؟ ایک سپاہی کہتا ہے ایک بچی ہے وہ رو رہی ہے. یزید پوچھتا ہے یہ بچی کس کی ہے؟ کہا حسین کی بچی ہے. کیوں رو رہی ہے؟ فرمایا وہ اپنے بابا کو بہت یاد کر رہی ہے. بس ایک مرتبہ یزید کہتا ہے، قیامت کا جملہ ہے عزیزان گرامی، یزید کہتا ہے جاؤ سکینہ کو اپنے بابا کا سر دے کر آؤ. اللہ اکبر. مولا حسین علیہ السلام کا سر ایک تشت میں رکھا جاتا ہے، اس تشت کے اوپر ایک کپڑا رکھا جاتا ہے چراغ کے ساتھ. ایک سپاہی زندان شام میں آتا ہے. بس جیسے ہی سکینہ نے وہ تشت کو دیکھا نا، اور تشت میں کپڑا تھا، سکینہ پکارتی ہے اب مجھے بھوک نہیں ہے، مجھے کھانا نہیں چاہیے، مجھے پیاس نہیں. بس ایک مرتبہ جب وہ کپڑا اتارا جاتا ہے، چکی سکینہ دور کر بابا کے سر کو اپنے آغوش میں لیتی ہے. فرماتی ہے بابا جب آپ خیمے سے نکلے تھے تو آپ کی رگیں سلامت تھی. بابا یہ آپ کی رگوں کو کس نے کاٹ دیا؟ ایک مرتبہ سکینہ اپنے بابا کا سر لیتی ہے، اپنے رخسار اپنے گال بابا حسین کے گالوں پہ رکھتی ہے. فرماتی ہے بابا آپ کے بعد مجھے بہت ہی ظلم پر ہے، بابا میں یہاں نہیں رہنا چاہتی، بابا آپ مجھے یہاں سے جلد لے جائے۔ ایک مرتبہ بیبیاں کھڑی ہوتی ہے، ہلکا ہوتا ہے، کیا دیکھا؟ سکینہ زمین پر گر گئی۔ بی بی سمجھ لی ایک مرتبہ عابد بیمار، ہاتھوں میں ہتھکڑیا، پاؤں میں بیریا، گلے میں خاردار توک، اپنی بہن کے پاس جاتے ہیں، بہن کو اٹھایا، انا للہ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ۔ پھوپھی اماں میری بہن مجھے چھوڑ کر چلے گئی، لیکن عزیزان گرامی سن سکیں گے جملہ، ایک مرتبہ گلے میں خاردار توک، ہاتھوں میں زنجیریں، پاؤں میں بھیریا، سید سجاد ایک ننھی سی قبر کھودتے ہیں، ایک ننھی سی قبر کھودتے ہیں۔ دل کہنا چاہتا ہے کہ جب زین العابدین لید میں اترے ہوں گے تو عجب نہیں پکارے ہو بابا اپنی امانت کو واپس لے لیجئے، لیکن اے شرمندہ ہے آپ کا بیٹا، اس طریقے سے امانت کو واپس کر رہا ہوں کہ کان بھی زخمی، رخسار بھی زخمی، پشت پہ بھی کوڑے کے نشان۔ عزیزان گرامی بہت سال کے بعد رحلت کر گئی سکینہ، بہت سال کے بعد سکینہ کی قبر میں پانی آ جاتا ہے۔ ایک مرتبہ کوئی سید زادیوں کے خواب میں اور ایک سید دمشق کے خواب میں سکینہ جاتی ہے، کہتی ہے کہ میرے قبر میں پانی آ چکا ہے، اے میری قبر کی تعمیر کراؤ۔ ایک مرتبہ قبر کھودی جاتی ہے، سید زادیہ لحد میں اترتی ہے، چیخ کر روتی ہے، واہ مظلومتا، واہ مظلومتا، ارے کیوں رو رہی ہے؟ فرمایا آئندہ وہ اہل سنت کی جو روایت ہے نا کہ یزید نے غسالہ کو بھیجا تھا، یزید نے کفن بھیجا تھا کہ اس بچی کو غسل دیا جائے، اس بچی کو کفن دیا جائے، آئندہ اس روایت کو نہ پڑھنا۔ ہم نے دیکھا یہ بچی اپنے کرتے کے ساتھ دفنائی گئی تھی، اس کے کان میں خون کے نشان تھے، اس کے رخسار زخمی تھے، اور اس کے ہاتھوں میں رسی اس کے زخم تھے۔ ہاں عزیزان گرامی ماتم کے لیے، رونے کے لیے یہ جملہ کہہ دینا کافی ہے کہ سارے اہل حرم زندان شام سے رہا ہو کر مدینے چلے گئے، ان کے سوگ اتر گئے، لیکن آج بھی زندان شام میں اکیلی حسین کی بیٹیاں ہے، دبی دبی سسکیوں کی آوازیں آ رہی ہے، بابا بابا بابا، ماتم حسین یا حسین۔